The room was electric with tension. Under the golden chandeliers of the Royal Casino, fortunes would be won and lost tonight. I, Darren Cole, was at the center of it all, not as a player, but as the dealer. My reputation for precision and neutrality made me a staple in high-stakes poker games. I was the guy who made sure every card, every chip, every glance meant nothing but the game itself. At least that's what everyone believed. I kept my movements smooth, my face expressionless, as I dealt the cards to the VIP players seated at the velvet-draped table. Each of them had bought in with a staggering $5 million, and the pot was climbing fast. This wasn't just another poker game. This was the Royal Poker Championship. Cameras streamed the event live, audiences around the world glued to their screens. But beneath the glitz and glamour was a secret. For the first time in my career, I wasn't neutral. I was part of a plan, a meticulously crafted scheme to rig the game and walk away with millions. The plan was simple in concept, but brutal in execution. I'd partnered with three players at the table. Wes, a seasoned card shark with nerves of steel. Nina, a tech genius disguised as a socialite. And Arjun, a financial prodigy with a knack for numbers. Each of them had a role, and I was the linchpin. My job? Signal subtle information about the cards through imperceptible gestures, a tap of the ring finger, a slight adjustment of my bow tie. The payoff wasn't just the prize money. Nina had ensured that every time a high-value pot was won by one of us, a fraction would be siphoned into offshore accounts using a program she'd coded into the casino's financial systems. We wouldn't just win, we'd bleed the house dry. As I shuffled the deck for the next hand, I glanced at Wes. He gave the faintest nod. Time to push the plan forward. I dealt him an ace and a king, knowing it was the perfect start for him to dominate the round. Arjun folded early, as planned, diverting suspicion from our group. Nina played cautiously, her perfect poker face hiding the fact that she already knew her cards were worthless. Everything was going smoothly until one of the other players, a billionaire named Marcus Steele, leaned back and studied me. "You're good, Cole," he said, his voice a mix of admiration and suspicion. "Almost too good." My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my expression neutral. "Just doing my job, Mr. Steele," I replied calmly, sliding the river card onto the table. Inside, though, I was rattled. Steele was sharp, a veteran of these games. If anyone could sniff out a con, it was him. As the game progressed, the stakes climbed higher. Steele pushed all in on a bold bluff, and Wes called it with a flush. The crowd erupted as Wes raked in the massive pot, his expression one of feigned surprise. Behind his calm exterior, I knew he was riding the adrenaline rush. When the break came, I retreated to the dealer's lounge to catch my breath. That's when Nina slipped in, her eyes darting to make sure we were alone. "We've got a problem," she whispered, her tone tight. "The system flagged Steele's account. He's watching every transaction, and he's noticed discrepancies." My stomach sank. "How close is he?" "Close enough to ruin us," she said. "We need to finish this quickly." Back at the table, the atmosphere had shifted. Steele's eyes lingered on me with every move I made. The other players, oblivious to the undercurrent of danger, joked and drank, unaware that they were pawns in a game far larger than they imagined. I dealt the next hand with precision, my mind racing. If Steele suspected us, why hadn't he called for security? Was he toying with us? Or did he have his own agenda? One thing was clear. The stakes weren't just financial anymore. One wrong move, and this wouldn't end with a celebration. It would end with prison, or worse. As the round unfolded, Steele placed a massive bet, forcing Wes into a showdown. But instead of the confident play I expected, Wes hesitated. His hand hovered over his chips, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes, doubt. Or was it fear? That's when it hit me. Someone in our group wasn't playing by the rules. Someone was about to betray us. Wes hesitated for an agonizing second before pushing his chips forward, calling Steele's massive bet. The crowd fell silent as Steele revealed his cards. A pair of queens, good, but not unbeatable. Wes smirked as he flipped his hand. A full house. The room erupted in applause, but I couldn't join in. My eyes were locked on Wes's face. That moment of hesitation wasn't just nerves. Something was wrong. The pot was enormous, and as Wes scooped in the chips, I glanced at Nina. Her smile was too tight, her movements too careful. Arjun, seated 2 places away, didn't even look at her. His gaze was fixed on Steele, who leaned back in his chair, studying us all. The game pressed on, the stakes climbing higher with each hand. The crowd's excitement was palpable, but for me, the room felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Nina's earlier warning about Steele's flagged account kept replaying in my mind. He was on to us, but he wasn't acting yet. Why? At the end of the next hand, Steele pushed back from the table. "Gentleman, lady," he said, his voice dripping with charisma. "If you'll excuse me for a moment. Nature calls." He gave me a pointed look before walking toward the restrooms. As soon as he was out of earshot, Nina leaned in, her voice a hiss. "We've got a bigger problem. Steele's not just watching the transactions. He's recording them. He's waiting for the right moment to blow this wide open." "Then why hasn't he?" Arjun asked, his voice low but steady. "Because he's calculating," I said, my mind racing. "He's waiting until we're too deep to back out. If he exposes us now, we lose money. If he waits, he can take everything." Wes frowned, leaning back in his chair. "So what's the play?" "We can't just walk out. That'll make us look guilty. We stick to the plan," Nina said firmly. "Finish the game, siphon the money, and get out clean. Steele's just one guy. He can't stop all of us." But I wasn't so sure. Steele wasn't just a guy. He was dangerous, the kind of man who didn't need to rely on security or threats. He could destroy us with a single call, and we'd never see it coming. When Steele returned to the table, his smile was easy, but his eyes were calculating. The next hand began, and I dealt the cards with practiced precision, my fingers steady despite the chaos in my head. I glanced at Wes as I slid his cards to him, an ace and a jack of spades. He caught my eye and gave a small nod. The next few rounds played out in tense silence. Wes won another pot, then Nina took a small one to keep up appearances. Arjun folded early, his role as the group's fall guy intact. Steele watched everything, his expression unreadable. Then it happened. Steele pushed all in on a hand that should have been an obvious bluff. The crowd gasped, and the other players froze. It was a move designed to force us into action, to see who would flinch first. Wes hesitated again, his fingers drumming on the edge of the table. I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my back. This wasn't part of the plan. Wes was supposed to fold on this hand. "Call," Wes said suddenly, his voice steady. My heart sank as Steele revealed his cards. A straight flush. The crowd erupted, and Wes's face went pale. He had lost nearly everything, and with it, a crucial part of our plan. As the chips were raked away, Steele leaned back and gave Wes a slow, knowing smile. "Tough break, friend," he said, his tone dripping with false sympathy. I clenched my fists under the table. Steele was testing us, pushing our limits. But it wasn't just Steele. Wes's hesitation, his risky play, it all pointed to one thing. Someone had broken ranks. The next break came quickly, and I followed Wes into the lounge. "What the hell was that?" I demanded, keeping my voice low. "I had to take the risk," Wes snapped, his face flushed with anger. "Steele's on to us. If I backed down, he'd know we were working together." "He already knows," I shot back. "And now he's baiting us." "You just handed him the upper hand." Nina stormed in, her face pale. "We've got a bigger problem. Steele's not alone." "What do you mean?" Wes asked, his voice sharp. "I just saw him talking to the casino's head of security," Nina said. "They're planning something. If we don't finish this game and disappear, we're screwed." Arjun appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "They're locking down the floor. We've got maybe one more round before they close in." My stomach churned. Steele wasn't just playing a game. He was setting a trap. And if we didn't figure out a way to beat him, we'd all go down together. The tension in the lounge was suffocating. Nina paced back and forth like a caged animal, her heels clicking against the tiled floor, while Wes slumped in a chair, running his hands through his hair. Arjun leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his jaw tight. "We need a new plan," I said, breaking the silence. "Steele's got security involved, which means we're on borrowed time. If we don't cash out and get out of here now, it's over." "And how do you suggest we do that?" Wes snapped, his voice laced with frustration. "He's got all the chips. And if we try to fold, he'll call us out in front of everyone. Nina stopped pacing and fixed me with a determined glare. We need to turn this around. One big move. Steele wants to play games? Let's give him a game he won't see coming. I frowned. What are you thinking? Force his hand, she said. If Steele thinks he's in control, we have to flip the script. Push him into a corner where he has no choice but to make a mistake. Arjun raised an eyebrow. And how do we do that? He's got more chips than the rest of us combined. We can't outbid him. We don't need to outbid him, Nina said, her eyes narrowing. We need to make him think he's already won. I glanced at the clock on the wall. Time was running out. The casino floor would be locked down any minute, and once security got involved, there'd be no escape. All right, I said. Let's hear it. Nina leaned in, her voice low. We play aggressively. Wes goes all in on the next hand, no matter what cards he has. Steele will think we're desperate, and he'll call it. But here's the twist. Arjun has the real winning hand. He stays quiet, lets Steele think he's out of the game, and then comes in for the kill. That's a huge risk, Wes said, shaking his head. If Steele has even a halfway decent hand, we're screwed. We're already screwed, I shot back. Unless you've got a better idea, this is our best shot. Wes hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Fine, let's do it. Back at the table, the atmosphere was electric. Steele sat with a smug grin, his stack of chips towering over the rest of us. The crowd had thinned out, but the remaining spectators were on the edge of their seats, sensing that the game was nearing its climax. I dealt the cards, my hands steady despite the pounding of my heart. Wes's face was unreadable as he glanced at his hand, but I knew he wasn't looking at the cards. He was looking at Steele. Raise, Wes said, sliding his remaining chips into the pot. The crowd murmured in excitement. Steele chuckled. All in, huh? Bold move. He glanced at his cards, then leaned back in his chair. Call. The table fell silent as Wes revealed his cards. A 7 and a 2. A garbage hand. The crowd gasped, and Steele laughed. That's the best you've got, Steele said, shaking his head. He flipped his own cards, a pair of kings. The crowd roared with approval, already declaring him the winner. But Arjun wasn't done. Call, Arjun said, his voice calm as he pushed his chips into the pot. The room went still. Steele's grin faltered for a split second before he recovered. You've got nothing, Steele said, his tone dismissive. You're just trying to bluff me. Maybe, Arjun said with a shrug, but there's only one way to find out. The dealer flipped the community cards, and the tension in the room was palpable. The flop was a king, a 10, and a 3. Steele grinned, confident in his 3 of a kind. The turn was a queen, and the river, an ace. Arjun calmly laid down his cards, a jack and a 9, a straight. The crowd erupted, and Steele's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. You cheated, Steele shouted, slamming his fists on the table. Careful, Arjun said, his voice icy. Accusations like that can get you in trouble. Before Steele could respond, the head of security approached the table, flanked by 2 guards. Gentlemen, he said, his tone polite but firm, we need to have a word. The guards began collecting the chips, and Steele's smug demeanor evaporated. You don't understand, he said, his voice rising. They're running a scam. Save it, the head of security said. We've been monitoring this table all night. If anyone's running a scam, it's you. The guards escorted Steele out of the room, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. Nina leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. We need to go. Now. Arjun nodded, grabbing the chips and heading for the cash-out counter. I followed, my heart pounding as the realization hit me. We'd pulled it off, but the game wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. The air outside the casino felt cooler, sharper, as if the desert night had conspired to remind us how close we'd come to losing it all. We moved quickly, ducking into the alley beside the service entrance. Nina clutched a briefcase containing the chips, her knuckles white against the leather handle. Arjun kept glancing over his shoulder, his paranoia already kicking in. We're not safe yet, Arjun muttered. Steele's not going to let this go. He'll be back, and he'll have backup. That's why we're splitting up, Nina said, her voice cutting through the tension. She handed me a burner phone. Ryan, you take the chips to our contact. Arjun and I will cover different exits. We meet at the safe house in 2 hours. I hesitated, the weight of the plan sinking in. Why me? If Steele comes after anyone, it'll be the one carrying the money. Exactly, Nina said with a smirk. You're the best at thinking on your feet. If anyone can shake him, it's you. Arjun gave me a long look, then nodded. Just don't get caught. We didn't pull this off to hand it over to Steele or anyone else. I slipped the briefcase under my jacket, its bulk pressing uncomfortably against my ribs, and started walking toward the parking garage. The burner phone felt heavy in my pocket, its purpose as clear as the night sky above. If anything went wrong, I'd have to call for help. But in this game, help was often too little, too late. The parking garage was nearly empty, its fluorescent lights flickering ominously. I headed for my car, a beat-up sedan that blended into any crowd, and slid into the driver's seat. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel as I started the engine, scanning my surroundings for any signs of pursuit. The drive to the drop-off point was supposed to be uneventful. Supposed to be. But less than 10 minutes in, I spotted the black SUV in my rearview mirror. Its headlights were off, but the way it hugged my movements screamed trouble. Damn it, I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. I took a sharp right, cutting through a side street, but the SUV followed, its engine roaring as it closed the gap. My heart raced as I realized Steele's men, or someone worse, had found me faster than expected. I veered onto a freeway ramp, pushing the sedan's engine to its limits. The SUV stayed on my tail, its intentions clear. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. A construction zone loomed ahead, its orange cones and barricades a temporary maze. I swerved into the zone, narrowly avoiding a parked bulldozer, and zigzagged through the obstacles. The SUV hesitated for a split second before following, its tires screeching against the asphalt. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror. The SUV was closing in, but its driver was reckless, slamming into cones and scraping against barriers. I spotted an unfinished overpass ahead and pushed the accelerator to the floor, aiming for the narrow ramp leading up to it. The sedan jolted as it hit the ramp, its suspension protesting loudly. I reached the top and slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop just inches from the edge. The SUV wasn't as lucky. Its driver misjudged the turn, and the vehicle plowed into a stack of concrete barriers, flipping onto its side with a deafening crash. For a moment, the only sound was my own ragged breathing. I backed the sedan away from the edge and took a different exit from the construction site, weaving through side streets until I was sure I'd lost any remaining pursuers. The drop-off point was a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of town. I parked in the shadows and approached the entrance, knocking twice, then 3 times. The door creaked open, revealing a tall man in a tailored suit. His sharp eyes scanned me, then the briefcase. "You're late," he said, his tone disapproving. "Traffic," I replied, handing him the case. "It's all there. Count it if you want." He opened the case and gave a satisfied nod. "Good. Tell your friends the next phase starts tomorrow. Same time, same place." I nodded and turned to leave, my mind already racing with questions. The next phase? What had Nina and Arjun agreed to without telling me? Back at the safe house, the atmosphere was tense. Nina was pacing again, while Arjun sat with his laptop, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Well?" Nina asked as soon as I walked in. "Drop-off went fine," I said, collapsing onto the couch. "But Steele's men found me on the way. I had to lose them." Nina frowned. "Steele won't stop. He's too proud to let us walk away with this." "Pride isn't the only thing driving him," I said, pulling out the burner phone. "The guy at the drop-off mentioned a next phase. Care to explain?" Arjun exchanged a look with Nina, then sighed. "There's more to this than just the money. Steele wasn't the only one rigging the game. Our contact wants us to expose the entire network and take them all down." My stomach sank. This wasn't just about a payday anymore. We were in way over our heads, and the game was far from over. The room fell into a tense silence after Arjun's revelation. Nina's pacing slowed, her footsteps echoing against the bare walls of the safe house. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. Expose the network? Take them all down? That wasn't part of the deal. "We were supposed to cash out," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Take the money, disappear. not play whistleblower in a game we're barely surviving. Arjun leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. It's not that simple anymore, Ryan. Steele's network is bigger than we thought. The people running it, they don't just rig games. They control tournaments across the country. Millions of dollars laundered through every table. And what? We're suddenly the heroes who bring them to justice? I snapped. Nina finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. Think about it, Ryan. If we walk away now, Steele will hunt us down. His people, his connections, will never be safe. But if we take the network down, we cripple his power. We make sure he has no reason to come after us. Her logic was solid, but it didn't make the knot in my stomach loosen. We were thieves, not crusaders. This wasn't our fight. Arjun pulled up a map on his laptop, the screen glowing faintly in the dim room. I've been digging through their systems. Steele isn't the top dog. He's just a middleman. The real players are pulling strings from behind layers of shell companies and offshore accounts. Great, I said, leaning against the wall. So we're not just taking on Steele. We're taking on a shadow organization with unlimited resources. Sounds like a suicide mission. Nina crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. We've already started this, Ryan. If we don't finish it, we're dead. Steele's pride won't let him stop chasing us unless we take everything away from him. I let out a bitter laugh. And how exactly do we do that? We're three people with burner phones and a bag of chips. Arjun's lips curled into a smirk. Not just chips. These chips are loaded with data, encryption keys, access logs, transaction histories. Steele and his people were sloppy. They left breadcrumbs all over the tournament servers. If we play this right, we can expose them to law enforcement, the media, hell, even their own clients. The enormity of the plan weighed on me. This wasn't just about stealing a fortune anymore. It was about dismantling an empire. Nina placed a hand on my shoulder, her expression softening. I know it's a lot to ask, Ryan, but if we don't do this, we'll never be free. Steele will always have a reason to come after us. This is our chance to level the playing field. I sighed, my head falling back against the wall. Fine, but if we're doing this, we do it smart. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We stick to the plan, and we get out as soon as it's done. Arjun nodded, already typing furiously. Agreed. I've started tracing their financial web. It's going to take time, but I'll find a way in. In the meantime, we need to stay off the radar. Steele will be doubling his efforts to find us. Nina grabbed her bag and started packing essentials. I'll secure us a new safe house. We can't stay here now that Steele's people know the city we're in. I watched them work, my mind racing. This wasn't what I'd signed up for, but the reality was clear. We had no choice. Steele and his network had to go down, or we'd never have peace. The next few days blurred together in a haze of planning and paranoia. Arjun hacked deeper into the network, uncovering names, dates, and transactions that painted a damning picture of Steele's operations. Nina handled logistics, keeping us moving and ensuring our tracks were covered. I spent most of my time on reconnaissance, scoping out Steele's known hangouts and looking for patterns in his movements. It was risky work, but it gave me an edge, an understanding of the man who was hunting us. One night, as I returned to the new safe house, Nina met me at the door, her face pale. Ryan, we have a problem. What now? I asked, my heart sinking. She handed me a tablet with a news article pulled up. The headline read, Casino Heist Linked to Underground Gambling Ring. They've started spinning the story, she said. They're framing us as part of Steele's operation, claiming we stole the chips to cover up their crimes. Arjun entered the room looking grim. This changes everything. If we don't move fast, Steele's people will make us the scapegoats for their entire network. We'll be public enemy number one. I clenched my fists, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Then we don't wait. We hit them now, hard and fast, before they have a chance to bury us any deeper. Arjun nodded. I've traced their main server farm to a facility outside the city. It's heavily guarded, but if we can get in, we'll have everything we need to blow this wide open. Nina's eyes met mine, determination shining through her fear. This is it, Ryan. One last play. Are you in? I took a deep breath, the gravity of the decision settling over me. Let's finish this. The stakes had never been higher, but there was no turning back now. It was all or nothing, and the clock was ticking. The facility loomed ahead, a monolithic structure wrapped in layers of steel fencing and cameras. Floodlights sliced through the night, illuminating the gravel paths and guard posts. Arjun's research hadn't overstated the challenge. Steele's server farm was a fortress, the nerve center of his entire operation. We sat in a borrowed van a quarter-mile away, its windows fogged from the cold. Nina and Arjun were finalizing the plan, their voices low but urgent. I checked my gear, black hoodie, gloves, a small pack of tools for breaking and entering. My nerves were shot, my heart racing with the knowledge that this was it. Success or failure, there'd be no second chances. Arjun handed me an earpiece and motioned toward the laptop balanced on his knees. The cameras are on a loop for exactly 8 minutes. After that, we're blind. Once you're inside, head straight for the server room. It's on the second floor, northwest corner. I'll guide you as best I can. Got it, I said, pulling the earpiece into place. What about the guards? Nina pulled a small map from her jacket and pointed to several marked areas. There's a patrol that cycles through every 12 minutes. You'll need to time your moves carefully. If you get caught... I won't, I said, cutting her off. I didn't need the reminder of what would happen if things went sideways. She hesitated, her eyes locking with mine. Just don't do anything stupid, Ryan. We need you. Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. I gave her a quick nod and slipped out of the van, the cold night air biting at my face. The adrenaline kicked in as I approached the outer fence, crouching low to avoid the sweeping beams of light. Arjun's voice crackled in my ear. Camera loop starting now. You're clear to climb. The chain-link fence was slick with condensation, but I scaled it quickly, landing silently on the other side. Ahead of me, the building's exterior gleamed under the harsh lights. I darted toward a side entrance, keeping to the shadows. The keypad on the door should be accessible, Arjun said. I've sent a bypass code to your phone. Plug it in. I fumbled with my phone, inputting the code into the device strapped to my wrist. A green light blinked on the door, and I slipped inside, my footsteps muffled by the carpeted floor. The hallway stretched ahead, eerily quiet save for the hum of distant machinery. Second floor, Arjun reminded me. Take the stairs to your left. I moved quickly, my senses heightened. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound sent my pulse skyrocketing. At the top of the stairs, I paused to check for guards. The hallway was clear, but the tension in my chest didn't ease. The server room door was exactly where Arjun had said it would be. I crouched by the keypad, pulling out the device again. The lock clicked open, and I stepped inside, greeted by rows of blinking servers and the low hum of cooling fans. I'm in, I whispered. Good, Arjun said. Plug the drive into the main terminal. It's the one with the red strip along the base. I scanned the room, spotting the terminal near the far wall. As I approached, a faint noise caught my attention. A soft shuffle, like fabric brushing against metal. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Ryan, Arjun's voice crackled. What's wrong? Someone's here, I whispered, barely audible. The sound came again, closer this time. I ducked behind one of the server racks, my heart pounding. A shadow passed by the doorway, and I caught a glimpse of a figure in a dark uniform, one of Steele's men. Stay calm, Arjun said. He hasn't seen you. Just wait for him to move on. But the guard didn't move on. Instead, he stepped into the room, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. I held my breath, pressing myself against the cold metal of the server rack. The light swept past me, lingering for a moment before shifting away. The guard muttered something under his breath and turned toward the exit. I waited until his footsteps faded, then moved quickly to the terminal. My hands shook as I plugged in the drive and started the upload. Drive is in, I said. How long? 3 minutes, Arjun replied. Stay put. 3 minutes felt like an eternity. I kept my eyes on the doorway, my ears straining for any sign of movement. The bar on the screen inched forward, painfully slow. 2 minutes, Arjun said. Almost there. A noise outside the door made me jump. A distant shout, followed by hurried footsteps. My blood ran cold. They'd found us. Ryan, you need to move. Arjun's voice was urgent. Abort and get out of there. No, I said through gritted teeth. We need the data. Damn it, Ryan, Nina's voice cut in. If you don't leave now, you'll never make it out. The bar hit 100% and the screen blinked. Upload complete. I yanked the drive from the terminal and bolted for the door, adrenaline overriding my fear. The hallway was no longer empty. Two guards were heading straight for me. Without thinking, I turned and sprinted in the opposite direction, my lungs burning as I pushed myself faster. Left at the end of the hall, Arjun said. There's a service exit. I skidded around the corner, nearly colliding with a third guard. He shouted, reaching for his radio, but I slammed into him, knocking it from his hand. My momentum carried me past him, and I didn't look back. The service exit loomed ahead, a heavy metal door marked with a bright red sign. I threw myself against it, stumbling into the night air. Behind me, the shouts grew louder, but I didn't stop running. The van screeched to a halt nearby, and Nina threw the door open. Get in! I dove inside, the van peeling away before I'd even shut the door. My chest heaved as I tried to catch my breath, my hands trembling from the adrenaline. We got it, I said, holding up the drive. Now let's finish this. The van roared down the dark highway, headlights slicing through the fog that hung low over the deserted road. Arjun was at the wheel, white-knuckled and tense, while Nina sat beside him, laptop open and her fingers flying over the keys. I slumped in the back, the adrenaline crash hitting me like a freight train. My body ached, my lungs burned, but the drive in my hand made it worth it. Anything? I asked, my voice hoarse. Nina didn't look up. Decrypting now. This level of encryption? Steele wasn't messing around. He's hiding something huge. I leaned forward, my exhaustion giving way to a gnawing sense of urgency. Whatever it is, it's got to be enough to take him down. He wouldn't guard it like this otherwise. Arjun glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his expression grim. Let's hope it's worth the risk we just took. Those guards won't stop hunting us, and Steele's reach is long. Not as long as he thinks, I said, gripping the drive tighter. If this exposes his network, it's over for him. The van's GPS pinged, signaling our approach to the safe house, a dilapidated farmhouse miles outside the city. It was the last place anyone would look for us, and that was the point. As the van pulled up the gravel driveway, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were racing against the clock. We filed into the farmhouse, locking the doors behind us. Nina set up her gear at a makeshift workstation in the living room, connecting the drive to her laptop. Arjun paced the room, his unease palpable. I sat across from Nina, watching as line after line of code scrolled across her screen. Got it, she said after what felt like an eternity. This is Steele's ledger. Offshore accounts, money laundering schemes, bribes to politicians. You name it, it's here. I leaned in, my pulse quickening. That's enough to bury him. Send it to every journalist and whistleblower group we've got on speed dial. Nina hesitated, her brow furrowing. There's more. She opened another folder, revealing a series of documents labeled Project Horizon. My stomach dropped as I read the summaries. Steele wasn't just laundering money, he was funding covert operations, everything from illegal arms deals to black site facilities for human trafficking. This isn't just corporate corruption, Arjun said, reading over her shoulder. This is war crimes. My hands curled into fists. We can't sit on this. The world needs to see it. Nina nodded, her fingers moving with renewed urgency. I'm uploading everything now, but Steele's no fool. He'll know the moment this goes live. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. You're out of your depth, Ryan. Stop now, or you'll regret it. I showed the message to the others, my jaw tightening. He knows. Arjun's face darkened. We need to leave. Once this uploads, he'll send everything he's got after us. The farmhouse's power suddenly cut out, plunging the room into darkness. Nina cursed, her laptop switching to battery mode. He's here, she whispered, her voice trembling. The faint hum of engines echoed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Headlights appeared on the horizon, a convoy of black SUVs speeding toward us. Go! I shouted, grabbing the laptop and shoving it into Nina's hands. Out the back! We sprinted for the rear exit, the sound of tires crunching gravel close behind. The SUVs skidded to a halt, doors flying open as armed men poured out. Gunfire erupted, shattering windows and splintering wood. We bolted into the woods behind the farmhouse, the dense trees offering a fleeting sense of cover. My heart pounded as bullets tore through the branches around us. Arjun led the way, his flashlight cutting a narrow path through the darkness. "Keep moving," he yelled. Nina stumbled, nearly dropping the laptop. I grabbed her arm, pulling her upright. "I've got you! Don't stop!" The gunfire grew fainter as we put distance between us and the farmhouse. But the threat was far from over. Steele's men wouldn't give up easily, and we were running out of options. We reached a clearing where Arjun had stashed a second vehicle, a beat-up truck hidden under a camouflage tarp. He yanked the tarp off, tossing it aside. "Get in!" he shouted. We piled into the truck, and Arjun floored the gas pedal. The engine roared to life, and we sped away, leaving the farmhouse and Steele's men behind. As the adrenaline ebbed, I looked at Nina, who clutched the laptop like her life depended on it. "Did the upload go through?" She nodded, her breath ragged. "Everything. It's out there now. Steele can't bury it." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Steele wouldn't go down without a fight, and we were far from safe. "This isn't over," and I said, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. "But it's a start. We've put a crack in his empire. Now we finish the job." The others nodded, their resolve matching my own. We were in too deep to turn back now. The game wasn't over, but for the first time, the odds weren't entirely in Steele's favor.